Hey, hey, hey. Let's have
Hola.
some fun today. Oh, I was thinking about where do I want to start in that connection? And so let's just notice for a moment, if you will, what are we thinking about right now? What are our thoughts that are going on in our head? And of course, now for some people, they're going to be like, well, what am I thinking about? That's what I'm thinking about. Get on Facebook every once in a while. It'll say, what's on your mind? Well, now I'm thinking about what's on my mind. So just notice that we have all of these thoughts. We have all of these thoughts swimming around in our head, things that our mind wants to tell us, things that our brains are telling us about the world, what's going on outside of us, what we notice within our awareness when we look around with our eyes, when we hear with our ears, taste with our mouths, smell with our noses, feel with either our skin or just kind of the energy that we're in. So just notice that we have lots and lots of thoughts. In fact, we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts every day. And most of those thoughts, 95% of them, are just habitual thoughts that we're not even aware that we're thinking. And then we have our bodies. And our bodies are this lovely sensory organ that basically show us in our feelings, our emotions, what we're taking in with our senses from the outside world, and then what meaning we are attaching to that. And then all of that creates this wonderful chemistry inside of our bodies. So just notice what kind of chemistry is going on inside of your body right now. Maybe it feels like a tummy ache or butterflies. Maybe it feels like angina. Maybe it feels like a rapid heartbeat. Maybe it feels like a catch in your throat. Maybe it feels like a little bit of a butt pucker because you've got to poop and you're holding it in. Or maybe it feels like incredible fullness inside your body because you haven't pooped for a couple of days. Just notice we have our thoughts and we have these feelings, these emotions, these sensations inside of our bodies. And the two are inextricably, did I say that right? Inextricably connected. And so today, Erin and I are going to be talking about, drum roll please,
I want to be like one of my most favorite emotions.
anger.
Anger. And I say one of my most favorite because I think it has been the most profound experience to allow, to not feel shame that you feel it. I think anger as a societal world, I don't know, right? All of the humans, like, I think I'm 42, you're 53.
Yep, for a little
Okay.
bit more.
That's, I think we were brought up in the era of like, don't get mad. If you get mad, you'll go to your room or there will be some, repercussions for it. So I think over the last year, anger has probably been one of the emotions that I have had to get really comfortable with because I had a lot of repressed and suppressed anger. And
And
yeah,
some
I think
reactive.
it's, oh, for sure. Reactive. Yeah. Like all of it, like the whole gamut. And, I didn't talk to Tanya about this before the podcast, but like I threw out the idea like months ago, like we should have an anger retreat. And Tanya was like, I don't know if we should call it an anger retreat. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever we're going to call it, but there needs to be a safe space for people to be like, yeah, like I think like, let's just normalize it. So anger is an emotion.
Mm-hmm. And
It's
we're going to play
normal.
with it today.
And we're
We're
going
going
to
to,
play with it today.
yeah, we're going to play with this idea that um, Newsflash, if you are a human, if you are in a human body currently listening to this podcast, you too have an experience uh, around anger, right? If you are human, you have the emotion, the chemistry to create the sensation, the emotion, the feeling of anger in your body. And the goal isn't not to feel anger. The goal is to allow ourselves to feel it and allow it to move through us instead of being reactive to it or trying to repress it, which pretty much will fuck everything up. It's just
Yeah.
how it goes.
I mean, I like to say that the ocean is like one of my most favorite places to be and is such a beautiful example of like, that's the goal, right? Is to move like the ocean. Like the ocean does not hold on. Um, Yesterday we were on the west side and you can tell the ocean has changed the sand and it's almost creating some riptides. And you can see the people that were like trying to fight getting out of the water or getting into the water, and they all took tumbles and were eating sand and all of the things. And it's like the ocean doesn't hold on, right? The ocean comes and it goes. And that is the goal for all of our emotions, right? It's to allow them, to feel them, to let them move through our bodies
Mhm.
and be like the ocean.
Yeah, I just thought of this. Those in medicine know that everybody's body is different. And when a physician gives a prescription for medication, that medication has a certain chemistry to it, and the drug will have a certain half life to it,
Yep.
or like what is the duration in which this drug lasts, as well as different people will process drugs differently. And that's the same as our emotions. The emotion of anger is a certain chemistry that occurs within our body. And that chemistry, for the most part, lasts about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. But what changes within us is whether we are able to allow that emotion to run its course without either reacting or trying to repress it, versus like just allowing it to be there. So when we just allow anger, it's going to last no more than a couple of minutes, generally within most human bodies. And we know that most of us have a story about why expressing our anger is either okay or not okay. And that's when we run into the reactive or the repressive side. And this is all going to be based on our conditioning as well as our patterns.
I want to say one thing because I'm like, okay, for my people listening that are like, the fuck, it does last 90 seconds. Here's the deal. There are some of us, lots of us on this planet that have pushed down years and years and years and years of anger. So, yes, 90 seconds for that one moment, right? That you're occurring presently. And if you think about all the years that you've repressed, suppressed the anger, you're going to also, that's going to come up too. And then the next question or fear might be, well, I've got 60 years of this. Is it going to take me 60 years to allow it to all come out too? No,
No.
it won't. Okay.
Oh, I want to interject here that part of what we are looking at, it's not like you are a well and you've been filled with 60 years worth or 50 or 40 or whatever of this repressed anger. What we're saying is it becomes a pattern. So we have conditioning and pattern, which I'm going to let Erin kind of expand on. With our patterns of how we handle anger, this sets up a precedent within our physical bodies and our mental awareness that when something happens, when we're in a situation, that the body says, hey, I know in this situation, I create anger. That's always going to be our go to. The body says, if this condition and this condition and this condition is met, then we create the sensation, the emotion of anger, and that becomes our pattern. And so, what we are in the process of doing in order to heal, in order to be able to move through the sensation of anger, what we're actually deconstructing is our patterning and our conditioning, our addiction to creating anger. It's not like you've got a bunch of anger stored in your body. It's that your body says, oh, we're going to Anger Town. I know the way. Let me get you
Yes.
there fast.
Thanks for the clarification.
Because I'll tell you what, when I first started out, I thought I had a ton of this emotion like stored in my body and I had to go
Mm,
find it. I had to
yeah,
figure it
no,
out. And that was like, just shoot me now.
that seems, yeah, exhausting. Sorry, guys, if I made it seem like that, because
No, no,
that's not what I meant. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because it's so important for us to know we don't have to go looking for it. We don't have to exercise, like I think
Yes.
I saw the movie Exorcist when I was very young. It was a very influential thing. Like we don't have to go looking for the pea soup and have our heads spinning as we're spitting all of this stuff out of us that we've had for however many years. So
It's like the toll road, right? So I'm sure most of you probably have a toll road. So it's like the expressway. If you're used to that, our bodies and the way our neural pathways work, it's the shortest, most efficient way to get there, right? So part of the work that we help with clients is building new roads. And
yes.
sometimes at first it's like, well, that road is slow and that road is a little bumpy and that road, right? And it's going to be like that until that new road now becomes the new toll road. So hopefully that is a
Yeah.
explanation for that. So
So when we talk about conditioning,
yes.
conditioning is the exposure. Like our parents have patterns, the way they were raised, their environment,
Mhm.
how they've adapted. And what we get exposed to is the conditioning, right? It's the energy in which we have been exposed to. And then our patterns are what get established. Like, how do we deal with the anger? So, probably one of the best stories to convey that is like talking about when you were a kid. What would happen for you with anger?
Yeah. So conditioning in my household, I have a brother who's a manifester, a sister who's a manifesting generator, a dad who's a manifesting generator, and a mom who's a reflector. And I am a generator. And you guys don't have to, focus on that. But just to give you an idea, if you're aware of human design, anger is a very well not self theme that exists, right? So my parents, were parented by their parents, right? And they didn't know that anger is a natural emotion. So when anger would come up in my family, mainly between my brother had a lot of anger and my sister had a lot of anger. I did too, but I just learned, listen, from our conditioning, it's not allowed. You're not allowed to yell at your parents. You're not allowed to get upset. You're not allowed to slam doors, punch holes in the walls. And I'm not saying to our listeners that all of that's acceptable either. I'm just saying that there are some things that like we've got to express the anger somehow, right? Punching a
Yep.
pillow, yelling, something, right? So the expression was not allowed. So because of that, and the way sometimes it would be is through, for lack of a better word, punishment, right? So either you got sent
Mhm.
to your room, you got spanked, and I learned very on I didn't want any of those things. So I just didn't express it, and I in exchange repressed or suppressed it. So my conditioning taught me, if you act like this, if you are feeling anger and you do these things, this is what's going to happen, consequences, right? And so my pattern was, I won't say it. I won't speak up. I won't say what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. And my patterns over my years of growing up and then now being in a relationship and then parenting is, listen, if I say what I'm feeling, it's going to be met with some resistance, right? Or some and they might feel anger. And so then now you've got them having anger, me having anger, right? So that's not okay. That's not safe, right? In my body, it's
Mhm.
not safe. So what I have chosen in the past to do is to not sometimes not say how I'm really feeling, because I know what it might, can't make anyone feel a certain way, but that might evoke an emotion or a response in either my partner or my child. And I don't want them to feel that way. So I just won't say what I'm feeling.
Yes. So, also a little component about human design, which Erin and I play with human design as well as gene keys to really help us understand the patterning and emotions. When we talk about not self, it's really an expression that's kind of going against our nature. With manifestors or with manifest generators, there is a wild creative force that exists within the manifestor and the manifest generator. And that wild creative force does not like to be interrupted. And
True
when
story.
it, yes, when it is interrupted, it creates a sensation of anger. Many of us, speaking as a manifest generator, were not taught how to be in that emotion. We're not taught how what it truly meant was, which is a disruption in our creative flow. That anger is a lot of energy, and that's where it feels very unsafe for many of us in our bodies. And so that not self is essentially feeling an intensity and not knowing what to do with it. 50% of the world's population is emotionally defined. This is another human design aspect. So 50% of the world is what's called defined, and 50% is what's called undefined. So if I were to make this simple, in the area of emotion, we're just talking about emotion right now. In the area of emotion, half of us are like a bowl that is full. All the emotions are there, accessible all the time, whether that's anger, sadness, joy, pleasure, shame, whatever, right? An emotionally defined person, half the population, that bowl is consistently full with any emotion. You get to reach in the bowl and pick out whatever it is you're experiencing. The other half of us are what's called undefined. Our bowl is essentially empty, but we collect the emotions from others, and then we like add a little yeast to it and let it rise and let it expand, right? We amplify that. So if you are someone who is undefined with their emotions, and then you add anger to the mix, and you've had any kind of conditioning that says anger is not safe, well, we've got a hot mess to deal with. And then if you are emotionally defined, having that energy and being in that energy and having somebody add to it, like you, Erin, with a manifester as a brother and a manifest generator as a sister and a manifest generator as a father, you've already got anger in your bowl. And yet the three of them are spilling out that extra. And then you've got a mom who's a reflector, and reflectors are completely undefined, which means they're also undefined in their emotions. And so your mom is over there like, let's put the amplification on
Hold on to the oh shit bar.
Right? And poor little Erin is like, what the fuck is happening? All this anger around me. And I better just like, I got to turn down the sensitivity. I have to repress all of this emotion because it is not safe in my body. I've already got enough of my own anger. Not safe,
Yep.
not safe, not safe, not safe. Shut down.
There sums up the story of my life right there. Done.
Right?
And we're done, folks. Yeah. Yeah. No, completely. And I did not understand that until probably within the last 6 months, right? Like, because I think if you were to ask people that knew me, you would probably get like, she's totally, chill, right? Until I wasn't,
Until
right?
you weren't. Yes. It's like, Jesus, get out of the way. If Erin's
Also,
pissed.
too, what Tanya also helped me realize is going back to our conditioning and our patterns. We can sometimes take on these energies from our parents, right? So I might have, as a generator, mine isn't anger as much as it's frustration.
Mhm.
And I took on a lot of anger because I was just surrounded with that, right? Like, so I didn't realize that some of actually when I was experiencing the anger that was coming, when I was allowing it, right, releasing it, I didn't realize that some of it maybe wasn't even mine, right? It was just what I kind of had, how do I say this? Just like absorbed
Mhm.
because that's what I was around, right? Like so just kind of being curious, like I think first it's kind of like, how do we change anything? First we become aware, obviously, right?
Mhm.
And then once we're aware, we stop shaming ourselves for feeling how we feel, right? You
Mhm.
can't have any change if we're shaming. And I think sometimes, in the self-help world, hashtag, good vibes or, all the things, it's like, yeah, well, also it's
Just be
okay to,
positive.
yeah, just be positive. There you go. Thank you. It's like the point isn't to be happy all the time. That's not the point. The point is to feel all of our emotions, and it's totally okay. And also know how to move through that and allow it. I'm not saying, oh, you feel anger, go yell at your spouse and berate. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And I'm also not saying keep your mouth shut and never talk to anybody and express how you're feeling, because that's not healthy either.
So that brings up the awareness. Anger is just, it is. It is an
Yep.
emotion that we have. And what Erin is saying so beautifully here is that it's not to say we don't ever want to feel anger. Just like put on a happy face, everything's fine. Just be positive. It also isn't equally to, like, it's not to cover it up. It's not to never feel it. It's to be able to allow ourselves to move through it with ease. When we're not trying to push it away or suppress it, and we're not in a state of reacting to it, which we see a lot of that on TV, right? That's highlighted for us exceptionally with the reactivity of anger begetting more anger, right? And it's really this reactivity to it. So, and then it becomes a pattern, it becomes a habit of how we deal with anger. We either deal with anger by reacting to it, which means we're going to yell at our spouse or yell at our kids or like be violent. We're going to need to express that anger in a reactive way. Or we're repressing it. We're not saying how we feel. We're holding all of that energy and tension inside of our body. It turns inwards, which, by the way, creates things like inflammation. It creates things like blood pressure, high blood pressure. It creates things like tension within the body. All of that energy is being directed inward. It's either being directed outward in how we
Yep.
express, or it's being directed inward. So then, what's a person to do if we are not reacting and we're not suppressing? Well, what do we do?
Yeah. And I feel like I need to give some love to my male humans over here, because I think as a society, we we um we don't feel like it's okay for males to be upset.
Hmm.
And I know your husband has mentioned this, and I know I've talked to other men that have mentioned this too. It's like, I never want to be upset and to scare someone, right? So
Hmm.
that, but what they are doing in essence is they are turning it inward because they're not able to safely. And here I say this again, I'm not saying, hey, go yell at your spouse, right? But we have to learn, and this is one of the things that Tanya and I help our clients with, is like, we have to learn how to express that in a safe environment, right? Whether you're with a coach or a therapist, or you're, able to, you know, punch your pillow or whatever it is, right? Like, there needs to be some expression of it. And I think at least the Western culture is, you know, how do I want to word this? Like, for lack of a better, told men they're not allowed to. There's something wrong with you. You're such an angry man. You're such an angry, right?
And it's not
And
just men. I
no,
have
that's true.
I have several friends of color that one of them said to me, it's not safe for me to express anger because then I'm just an angry Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how she's seen. It's not okay for me to express when I'm feeling this way
Yeah.
because this is how I'm seen. And then this is what society will say about me. So, for our listeners, um, Tanya wants to first say your anger is a normal emotion. And that's also what, when Erin and I were talking about today's podcast, she said, I want to talk about anger,
Yeah.
um, to normalize it for all of the
Yes.
humans. So we are saying that anger needs to be able to learn how to be expressed. And it needs to be expressed first in a place of safety. In order for us to be able to feel the sensation of anger, that high volume of um, vibration, because anger is just a vibration,
Yep.
just just like joy, love, um, pleasure, shame, right? Those are all vibrations. They have a certain frequency to them, and anger is just another one of those frequencies. And there's a lot of social stigma attached to that: cultural, social, religious, you name it, right?
All of it. Yep.
So, for our listeners, how would you say that you have started practicing being safe to express anger, as well as how do you do that safely? What does it mean to be able to express yourself safely? What have you noticed? Let me ask you this. Could you use an example with your family, what you've learned about anger and what has changed for you from your childhood pattern? What did you first start becoming aware of? What have you noticed?
Well, like we've said already, one, it's normal, right? It's not a problem that we experience anger. Um, with my immediate family, meaning my husband and my daughter, what I wanted to, because there was a time that I recreated those same patterns with my kid, right? You're not going to yell at me. You're not going to, like, do we need a separation? Do I need to leave? Like, so it was me understanding, obviously getting lots of coaching. Thanks, Tanya. of, of that she's not, I think a lot of times too, when we feel someone's anger or sense someone's anger, we think it's at us or about us. And more often than not, it's not. It's actually within them. And we are just that sounding board, for lack of a better word, for it. So once I realized that it wasn't me, it wasn't a direction at me, because I think as a child, I took it that way, right? Like I did something wrong. It's my fault. I'm a bad person. I'm a bad kid. We make it who we are versus it's just an emotion. It's a human having an emotion, and they aren't anger, right? They're just experiencing and feeling anger. And we aren't anything that's making them do these things, right? So once I kind of separated myself from that and realized like, okay, my kid, one, also two, learning about human design, right? Like she gets really, like Tanya already mentioned, as a manifesting generator, when I interrupt her, she gets really angry because she's in her, and I can think of like Legos, right? When she's in her work zone, when she's in her creative flow, do not bother her. And me asking her questions or asking her, if I were to say, I don't do this, but if I were to be like, okay, it's time to go clean your room, or I don't know, whatever, right? That's really, I'm not going to make her upset, but that whole interaction, she's going to feel anger because she's being interrupted, right? So learning about human design, learning about how each person has their tendencies and knowing that it's not me and taking it personal, and also wanting to be that safe space for my family. Like I didn't have that. And so I wanted to stop the patterns. And the way that we have to stop the patterns is we have to work through, ourselves and heal ourselves first. And also, I know you've talked about this a lot, Tanya, of like having like a surge protector, like the long ones, like the old school long ones, you might have 6, 8, plugins there. We've got eons, generations of emotions that we carry down in our DNA. And so if my grandpa is plugged in and my dad is plugged in and I'm plugged in and Grayson's plugged in, like, and on up past, right? Like that's lots of energy plugged into this.
And a fireman's worst nightmare of thinking of a daisy chain of surge suppressors plugged into another one, plugged into another.
So me working on myself first in my anger,
Mm-hmm.
healing some of that, and not some, a lot, right? I mean, I still have some that comes up when and this is the other thing. You don't have to go looking for it, right? Like, it's not like, okay, well, what are all the ways? Like, that's not what I did. It was just like when I would feel anger and I would come up, instead of me going into my office and working, instead of me, reacting and telling my kid, we're not going to act like this or whatever, it was stopping and actually feeling it and working through it in the moment versus, repressing, pushing it away, whatever. So, and it's important to me that, I'm a product of my product. So working through that, and to be able, because I think it's a powerful thing to be able to be with your kids when they're experiencing anger. And I wanted to have that type of relationship with Grayson, of that, being there for her, being that safe space. My husband says this a lot, like, well, you two girls, he calls us girls, you two girls fight. And I asked him this morning, I was like, is it actually fighting? Because there's no yelling here. Well, there might be yelling from Grayson, but me, I'm pretty like chill, right?
And it wasn't always that way.
And it was not always that way, right? For sure. But now I said to him, I said, is it actually us fighting, or am I a safe space for her to express her emotions? Because he asked her the other day, he's like, do you act like this with your teacher? She was like, no way, I would get in trouble. And I'm like, exactly. See, because she knows the game, for lack of a better word, right?
Hmm.
She can't act like this at school. So think about what she's experiencing at school. It's not able to be expressed. And then she brings all that energy home and she's like, Mom, you're my person I get to yell at and be angry with.
Hmm.
So, of course, it looks like from the outside, gosh, every time Grayson, not every time, but if Grayson's upset, she's always, with Erin. Well, that's because Erin is the place that right now she gets to practice being upset with.
Yeah. And what we're noticing, especially with not only our clients, but friends and other people outside of us, this is a skill that most
Yes.
of us have not been taught. We don't have a space in which to practice this. Think about how kids learn. Kids learn by practice and play. W- We are the same as adults. We're just children in grown-up
Yeah.
bodies. We're
Hmm.
we're all a product of our childhood in a grown-up body. So one of the things that we are aware of, and why I'm so glad that Erin said, let's talk about anger right now, is most of us, our nervous systems have been wired with 110 volts, and we're trying to allow 220 volts to move through our nervous systems. And for many of us, that is just a shutdown. So we have our conditioning was potentially that of angry parents. And just a fun note, Erin, as a pure generator, has a dad that is a manifest generator, a brother that is a manifester, a sister that is a manifest generator, and a mom that is a reflector. And in her family now, her husband is a manifest generator and her daughter is a manifest generator. So there's like, girl,
Bring
you
it on.
decided you wanted to learn about anger and about being able to diffuse that. I am a manifest generator. Of course, she picks a business partner that's an MG. I am married to a pure generator, and my mom was a manifest generator. My father was a projector. Um, so, what I learned with my energy, with anger for me, was to shut that down
Yep.
because it didn't feel safe in my mom's body. My mom grew up with her parents fighting, especially over money and her health. There was so much fighting going on that whenever I would get angry, I would hear things like, you better stow that anger.
Mm.
You need to go to
Mhm.
your room. Like
Yep.
it was too much. And one of the things that we are noticing in a lot of our clients is that many parents are just not adept or haven't had an opportunity to play with, explore, feel safe with anger. So then they, in turn, will shut their children down when it comes to anger. I
Yeah.
think about how I was like, my daughter is a manifest generator, and both her dad and I at one point, because I was a huge suppressor of my
Hmm.
anger. In fact, we would joke about the fact that Tanya has a really long fuse, but once that fuse got to the end, look out, because I would literally explode emotionally. And once that happened, I couldn't stop it. So I was either in a
It's like a bomb.
huge, yes, a
Yeah.
huge reaction, or I was very repressed about my anger because it wasn't safe to express it. And my mom actually taught me the same patterning. So it was funny and not funny that at 14, um, when we took our daughter to see another therapist to try and figure out why is she so angry all the time? Where's this anger coming from?
I
Like,
think a lot of parents think that. Like, I know my uncle, like, I know a lot of people that are like, why is my kid so angry? And as if it's a problem.
yeah, yeah. And I was thinking like David and I never fight because
Mm.
I had conditioned myself. I had various coping mechanisms to not show anger because I had also the conditioning or the pattern story that when you get angry, they leave.
Mhm.
I didn't want to break connection. So anytime I was feeling anger, I would essentially shut it down, except for the moments when I just couldn't. So I had this thought, geez, what, like, her dad and I never fight. We have a healthy, happy marriage. Everything is fine. This was that, slap some
We're perfect.
positivity on
Everything's
it.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, everything is
Yeah.
good. Everything's good, except for everything wasn't good. And my body was physically showing that. So we have to have a safe space in which to practice. And oftentimes, our awareness isn't there in the moment. We immediately go to that pattern. I describe it to clients oftentimes. Erin and I talk about it's like a map. And if you look at any given map, you'll see the freeways, the places that are going to get you to where you want to go the fastest. You'll see some side streets, and then there might be some country dirt roads. And then there are some places where it's like, to get from here to there, like you're going to have to forge your own path. And that's a little bit of what we play with and realizing oftentimes we're on the freeway to Anger Town before we even like we're there. We've
It's already
arrived.
happened. And then
We
we're
don't
like, oh shit, this is what
yep,
it did.
yep, don't know how I got there. Lost my shit on my kid. Um, I felt completely shut down and I've used whatever coping mechanism I've had to use in order to deal with either my husband's anger, my child's anger, my own anger, right? Um, and then it's a process of really coming into a place of awareness. Oh, and it usually happens after the fact. This is something that you and I teach a lot about is understanding our emotions. And I love the awareness that we have around what it means to be emotionally defined or emotionally undefined and the different energy types that show up with a manifester, a manifest generator, a projector, and a reflector, right? What else would you say? What else would you like to say about anger in your awareness? Or do you have questions that you want to ask me?
I think this is a
Generators
good
generators
oh,
ask
respond.
questions,
Yeah.
by the way, right?
I think this is a really good starting point. I told Tanya, before the podcast, like I wanted to do at least a 2-part series because I think it's almost like, when you have a dessert and it's so rich, it's like you have to take a little bit at a time. Like that's the way I feel like with this, right? Like it's there's so much goodness here of letting it biting off a little bit at a time and then taking the concepts deeper or elaborating on them, next time. I think the biggest thing for this episode is that I just want to convey to our listeners that like it's an emotion. It's not
Mhm.
good or bad. It's totally fine. Everybody
Not right or wrong.
is not right or wrong. Everyone feels it and we suppress it and we resist it and we
React
repress.
to
I
it.
said, yeah, suppress, repress, react, all of the things. And we
Mhm.
lose our shit and it doesn't make you a bad person. And we're learning. Like that is probably like, what's the takeaway? I want everyone to know, like, we're human. It's not who you are. It's just what you experience. And like, I would look at this as like, this is the awareness, right? This is the after the event, right? The way I look at
Mhm.
this podcast, this is after the fact. You've lost your shit and let's work on like, this is where I'm at right now. And it's okay.
Yep. Yep. And we are here with you, having traveled this journey many, many times.
And still do. Like, I don't want
Every
to sit
day.
here up on this stool being like, I don't lose my shit with my kid. Like I texted my mom this morning. I'm like, I love her so much. And sometimes I want to literally throw her in the Pacific Ocean. And I love her so much, it's like, so like not over here mastered it, right? Still happens, still exists. I'm a human, will always feel anger, all the things. And yeah.
And that's perfectly okay.
Okay.
Yes. So if you want to learn more about mastering your emotions, Erin and I will be here for you with more, as well as you can always check out Karen Curry Parker and Human Design. I think that's like when I recently went through her series that she had about reparenting your inner child through human design. She has lots of free information. This woman is so generous with her knowledge and her passion about human design. Um, you can also get a free profile on her site and eventually, hopefully, on ours as well at Who University. Gene Keys is another place. This is a path that we walk that is correlated or connected to human design. And Richard Rudd also will offer you a free profile on the Gene Keys, GENE Keys site. And another good tool that we play with and explore. So until next time.
Until next time. Feels good. Feels complete. Until next time.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye for now.
Love you all.